Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Along Come Norwich, a match review where I shall continue to try and be positive, but Norwich City have lost to Leeds away from home in a game that they certainly did not disgrace themselves. And I think before the match, I, maybe like some others, but me especially, had written off Norwich going into it in the sense of defeat was a sure thing for me. Performance, I wasn't really expecting too much. But I've come away from that thinking, this Norwich City team isn't as bad as I thought. And it's a weird position to be in because after wins, I've been sat here thinking, how can I try and be positive? Whereas now, after this loss, I don't want to sound overly positive. There are definitely good elements to take from that. And the first thing, especially, is that Leeds are a very, kind of use the word capable on Twitter. They are a very capable side. And that alone is enough reason to say that, yeah, Norwich's performance tonight was pretty good. You know, there's some real talent in that Leeds squad. Could sit here and list players and their transfer fees, and the fact they're managed by a guy we know very well, a guy who's won this league twice. The recipe is there for a team who shouldn't lose a game in the division, really, against a Norwich City team where there is a bit of a disconnect. There is a bit of a sense of massive underachievement. So they certainly haven't disgraced themselves. Let's look at the two halves separately. The first half, to be fair, they were fairly similar, but the first half, Norwich on the ball, they look fairly confident. Players like John Rowe sadly couldn't get into the game in full flow, and it really was just a lapse in concentration that sort of, well, in retrospect, lost Norwich City the game. It was abysmal defending, and Patrick Bamford is a player who scores goals in this division, and it's frustrating as hell to sort of say and to see, but when you give him half a chance, more than likely, he's going to score the goal. And what was interesting for me is I was curious as to with the 11 as to whether Norwich were going to try and take that Southampton approach of being a lot more safe, trying to lean more towards defending the goal than scoring one. But as we saw with the who was it, the West Brom game very recently, there is a bit more of a balance in terms of being able to go forward and create some coherent moves, as well as be a bit more defensively solid. For me, I think this is a Norwich City team who today were probably putting in maximum effort versus a Leeds team who didn't really seem to go up the gears. They sort of did when it was necessary, especially in that second half where Norwich started and they had the momentum, but Leeds took back control of the game fairly quickly. I think, what was it, like the 65th minute onwards, really. But as I said, let's not get too carried away. Norwich certainly didn't disgrace themselves tonight, and the title of this video, whether you're watching on YouTube or whatever platform that is progress, and a question mark. Is it progress for Norwich? And I say that in the sense of, as we've already covered, Norwich City are a team who perhaps aren't in their greatest period, whereas Leeds have very expensive players. They have a very successful manager in this division, but Norwich held their own quite well. And this can be perceived, and rightly so, as sort of scraping the barrel. But is that progression for Norwich in terms of being able to hold your own against that team and not look like there's too much of a difference in quality, which I don't really think there look to be tonight? Is a bit of a case of clutching at straws, but especially after the West Brom game where things were improved, I'm not going to get carried away, but they were improved. Is this just sort of the beginning of, maybe not saving the season completely, but is this the beginning of watching a Norwich City team who aren't as painful and slow to watch? Oh, that's a well-timed comment. No progress. We lost, created almost nothing. Subs were poor, and lapses that cost us. Yeah, I agree with the last bit in terms of lapses did cost us, or laps did cost us. The subs, were interesting. You know, the subs were different tonight in the sense of I expected John Rowe to get hooked fairly early, but he didn't. It seemed as if he was trying to give Rowe that chance. He beat David Wagner was trying to give John Rowe that chance to get himself back in the game, and Rowe is a player who is very well established in this division and can go missing in games, but can still score. Whereas when you play a team with the quality of Leeds, if you aren't going to be on it, then you're more than likely to get hooked off. And I think Wagner sort of, tried to break the trend of bringing him off when it feels like naturally he needs to, and tried to give him that chance to kick on and get himself in the game. And that was a 10-15 minute period when Fastnac came on, but he wasn't really able to. And I mean, you take out John Rowe's impact on a game in this team, and you do lose a lot of that offensive power. In terms of good performance tonight, I thought Kenny McLean was pretty good. He's such a machine in this division. That block in, I think it was the second half to stop whoever it was from scoring was really good. And again, it was from a lapse of concentration. It was John Rowe, wasn't it, who gave the ball away, and the attacker would have been kicking himself that he didn't sort of pull the trigger a little bit quicker, because there are those chances where if you don't take it, if you don't snap at it, then someone will slide in. And McLean did, and proved that he's covering every blade of grass on that pitch. Giannoulis had flashes of being fairly decent tonight. Jack Stacey was, I thought, really good tonight, by his standards anyway. Defensively, never the most sure, but I mean, in my opinion, fullbacks aren't really particularly defensively sure these days. But going forward, his crossing was decent. It was better than usual, in my opinion. But I do think it was a good performance. Shane Duffy, bar the goal, of course, was solid. And to be fair, you can probably pick out most names in that 11 and say they were quite solid. Gabby Sara's chance, I can't believe we've not spoken about that yet, in the first half was just unlucky. And in a game like that, you do look back at it and you think, oh, well, what if we'd scored that one chance? But to score and win games in the Championship, you need more than just that one chance to look back on. Adam Eder again in the second half. I feel bad for him. I don't resent him at all for it. It was just unlucky. He was very new to the game, and you sort of think, well, if he'd had a couple more chances, maybe he would have learned from that prior one and snapped at the shot a bit quicker. But unfortunately, when you're travelling away to a team like Leeds, you've got to take your chances. You've got to, and that is kind of where Norwich City are at the moment. So yeah, it's a bit frustrating. Team's not bad. The manager is, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one at the moment. St John Keeper, man, these are. I feel like you're being a bit harsh. In the second half, Leeds were a goal up, and they had that license to sit back a little bit and try and be a bit more comfortable. Defensively, I don't think they look that solid. I don't think Daniel Farke will be that impressed with that performance tonight, especially for a team that are looking to get promoted into the Premier League, and then I'm sure try and kick on and establish themselves. I'm not looking at that game tonight like I did when Leicester came to Carrow Road, and I know Leicester, in terms of their form and their level of performances, have perhaps dipped a bit since the trip to Carrow Road. The weird thing being results haven't, but I don't look at that Leeds team tonight and think, goodness me, they're going to go and run away with the league like I did when Leicester played Norwich at Carrow Road. And if you're a Leeds fan watching this, please don't be offended by that. It happens. Defence was poor first half. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it was that bad, to be honest with you. Gabby Sara, let's talk about the system. In the 10, I think it's pretty clear that needs to happen more often if you want to defend on the front foot. Weirdly, not having Ashley Barnes there allows you to, when you get the ball up to him, have a bit more creativity. Barnes is good. The Hull game away, for example, is a great example of his qualities, in that if the game is ugly, he can sort of throw himself about and kick lumps out of someone and hold the ball up a little bit. Whereas like nights like tonight, where that battle in the middle, especially between sort of Norwich's attackers and their defenders and defending midfielders, isn't really that physical. If you get the ball to Sara where Ashley Barnes is, all of a sudden the game opens up for you. And when Norwich play against sort of lower quality teams, which, again, it's difficult sometimes to judge that consistent level of quality in the Championship, because anything can happen on the day. But you'd like to think when Norwich City play against a team who aren't Leeds, they might have a bit more success, especially in home games where teams won't be coming to attack Norwich. And yeah, I hope that makes sense. Like, for example, Coventry, as an example, if you play Coventry at home, which we do on the 3rd of February, then I would like to think that having Gabby Struggles in the 10 is going to yield a few goals for you. And you know, looking forward to that game. John Rowe being there and being there, sorry, being a bit better essentially will, you know, there's a lot of elements of that performance tonight where if you sort of pick out things and try and polish them a bit, for example, Jonathan Rowe getting a bit more involved in the game, Juniors and Stacey's crosses being a little bit better, Sargent being another game fitter, the recipes are there for progression. But the overarching sort of negative feeling towards Norwich is still kind of there for me. But for me, that's trauma. There's no doubt that this year they've shown progression. David Gardner's been here long enough now that we can have enough in terms of that backlog of context. There is enough to see for me that Norwich, Norwich are making progression, but I don't know, the sustainability and the long-term nature of it, I don't know, you just can't call it. My proposed plan of the sacking of David Wagner at some point and getting in a younger coach who wants to maybe control possession a bit more, which weirdly enough Norwich kind of did tonight for periods of the game. It's just they weren't too penetrative with it. But that plan in my mind still seems like the way to play. WPK, Gabby looks off it recently. I don't know. I think he suffers when Norwich suffer, in the sense of if Norwich aren't playing that well, and that means the 10 players around him, if they aren't sort of giving him the chance to show what he's good at, it's the same as any attacking player really, then he perhaps won't thrive as much because he's not a holding midfielder. He's not going to go and win you loads of tackles and stuff. He thrives in a team where you have the ball and you have those forwards making those diagonal runs, which he can unlock. He's done a couple of times this season, hasn't he? And when the crosses are good, you'll see Gabby Struggles sort of lurking around and scoring the odd goal. Canary Jerry, do you think there's scope for 2 up top with Gabby sat behind? I mean, it kind of depends on if you want to lose your wingers. The natural sort of, I don't know, you sacrifice a lot by doing that, and you have to weigh up whether you want to do that or not. You know, there are a few options there in terms of, do you play sort of a diamond in midfield, like, you know, back in the Paul Lambert days, although he did have wingers. Do you play that diamond with Sarah, McLean, Nunez, and I don't know, maybe a third, Sorens, I don't know, and then those 2 up front? Or do you go for the holding midfielder who sort of sits behind that attacking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Do you go for that? Probably not. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. My feeling was I did want 2 up front. I did want Eder and Sargent up front. I don't really know how you make it work this season. I think it's something you can recruit around. I don't think they will, for what it's worth. But I think the 2 up top is a bit of a, you don't see it much in the game these days, do you? Because systems are very heavily 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1 based. I get very scared when saying anything tactical because I just know I'll read NCFC analysis thread after the game and think, oh yeah, well that's obviously, yeah. You sort of look at it, you go, oh yeah, and then doubt everything you say after. Jonathan Howard Hodgson, a few months back, we'd have lost this heavily. Not a Wagner fan, but in fairness, he's turned things around. So many positives. McLean playing well. Rowe having an amazing season. So proud of that. You know, it's good to have that refreshing level of positivity and optimism. It is good to have that. And I don't know if I wholeheartedly agree with all of it, but it is absolutely, you know, it is good to see. The last point we'll make, which is WBK. Last time, I still can't believe 3 minutes headed on, and then it was bizarre. I mean, you could hear it in Chris Gorham's voice, the surprise, and Bradley Johnson, who I thought both of them were excellent on co-coms tonight, where Bradley Johnson's insights as a player were great, but not particularly consistent. I thought just they as a pair were just good to listen to. Which there's some not so good pairs on Radio Norfolk sometimes. But yeah, it's crazy to me that there was 3 minutes added on and we played 9, 10 or whatever it was. Just poor officiating, and you can sort of go around the same roundabout in terms of the level of officiating that Norwich City face, but it's the same for every team. It's a very minute detail in the grand scheme of things. Norwich City did have 90 other minutes to have an impact, and they were unlucky. It happens. For me, I don't really have the ambition of or really am I too fussed about Norwich City making the playoffs this season? I think it would be nice, but for me, success can still come outside of the playoffs, which, as we get closer to May, will perhaps maybe see a shift depending on where Norwich are in the division. But I think that probably is everything. For me today is part of that January 2024 refresh, the progression, the Liverpool game. Let's just see what happens. I really don't see why Norwich can't just go there and maybe try something not completely new, but maybe try and attack the game or try and improve the defensive side. I don't know. Go and try something, whatever that means. So be it. Just go and try something that us fans can recognise and appreciate. That would be great. And then it's back to the league. It'll be against Coventry at home, where Norwich City will have the opportunity to get back to winning ways. And if we can see the kind of performances that we've seen tonight and we've seen against West Brom, against Coventry, I'm very confident of 3 points, and I don't think we'll have to approach that game backs to the wall. But as football, it's Norwich City. Who knows what will happen? Thank you all very much for watching this evening. If you're watching this not live, make sure you let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Me and George, and hopefully some other guests, will be back with a podcast, hopefully nice and soon. Keep your eyes peeled for the match review that will go on Along Come Norwich at some point. There I commit to a time. But for now, that is just about everything. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.